Hi, everybody. It's the Jere Metcalf Podcast. We're top real estate agents to how they do it. And top real estate agent Kevin Brown in New York City with Sotheby's, I should say Manhattan, Sotheby's International Realty. Thank you. Good to see you.
Well, wonderful seeing you again. And, as I just mentioned to you, you are gorgeous.
Well, thank you. You look quite fabulous yourself. So Kevin, your office is in Manhattan?
Indeed, I am. A little island, an island of bliss.
I love it. That's because you're there, by the way. So we'll stop complimenting one another. We just like one another. So we'll get some good stuff out. So tell me a little bit about, I know you and your team, you guys did $500 million.
Yeah, Nikki Field, the field team, we over 600 million in closed and pending sales. And so it's an impressive number. And so we've been very, very blessed having that. It's not a typical year for us. But, you have to realize that, especially your audience, that the rest of the country was doing gangbusters in 2020, into 2019. Manhattan, our business throughout Manhattan was down around 40%. Sotheby's confidentially was only down 25%. I had a great year, even in 2020. I beat my 2019 numbers where I was doing $80 sales. My 2020, I was only doing $1 to $4 million sales. It was my average. But I beat my 2019 numbers where I was doing $80 million sales.
$80 million, an $80 million sale. And
exactly.
Now you're doing 5% of that in your average sale, right? Or your sale prices.
Right.
Not 80 million, but 4 million and 1 million. And you did more.
Doing a lot more. And so in 2020, I pivoted because of COVID and how it was affecting our environment. And so all of a sudden I pivoted from doing international sales to doing local sales and doing, in the $1 to $4 million range. But again, my point is I beat my 2019 numbers. And then, of course, in 2021, I blew apart my 2020 numbers. So, it's going, fortunately going up, 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 up. And so we are blessed. Our inventory right now, just to give you a little snapshot of what's happening in Manhattan, because again, we're way behind the rest of the country, and what you're experiencing down in Florida and other people are experiencing around the country. Our inventory during COVID, typically our inventory is 6,500 units, they call it, units that are available for sale. It's been that way since I've been in business for 32 years. And, why it's not 20,000, I don't know, but it's 6,500 was always our benchmark. During COVID, it went up to 9,500. So now all of a sudden the New York Times will write saying inventory is 50% larger or greater than it was the year before. But if I'm a good broker and I'm asking the right questions, of any buyer, I can only show them 4 things. Now, because of COVID, I could show them 6 things. It wasn't like your market or the rest of the country where every house is different. We walk into pitching, and there's 60 apartments identical right above it and 60 right below it. So, we don't have that variety. Okay, so that 6,500 number and it went up to 9,500. In today's market, I just pulled it up. We're at 5,000. So we are anywhere, depending on the price point, 23 to 28% with fewer apartments today than a year ago. Yeah. So our inventory is greatly shrunk. What the strange part for me, and I'm supposed to have a clear crystal ball, and my crystal ball is as cloudy as everybody's, our pending sales are running double to triple what they traditionally are.
Yeah.
So shrinking inventory,
Growing
pending
sales.
are going up. Prices have not gone up. We are selling right now. The things that are going under contract are 2019 prices. Any idiot out there or economist or politicians could tell you that the laws of supply and demand.
So prices are about to go up. Yeah.
Spring, we're going to be like Florida. We're going to be like California, Denver, everywhere.
Our prices have already doubled, and I mean, everybody knows me in Atlanta, but I live in Florida now. But prices are double. Now, everywhere. They're just not yet in New York. What an opportunity!
Yeah, we're selling literally properties that were pre-COVID or COVID price properties, and so we're 2019 prices right now. What's also happening, and this might be of interest to your listeners, is the international buyers are returning. And
oh, you said, my goodness, here we go. It is about to be a crazy market in New York City. You heard it first right here on the Jere Metcalf Podcast with Kevin Brown, and I'm serious.
You heard it here first, but so we're seeing a trickling, and what's happening. This is again, my take on it is before people came into New York City, in Manhattan especially, they were looking at it as a safety deposit box. And so I'd always be talking numbers with them. I'd always be saying, okay, prices go up so much every year, or are they going up and up, and over a 10-year period, I'd always have that spiel. Now, all of a sudden, people are coming in. They're looking for a safe haven more than a safe box. They're still talking numbers. And what I mean by that is that imagine if you were in Mexico City, if you're in Delhi, if you're in Beijing, if you're, God forbid, in Moscow or Kiev right now. You're looking out the window and you're a billionaire or a multimillionaire, and you're seeing the haves and the have-nots. That disparity growing.
Even further, the gap's growing more. Yeah.
Then you have the overlay of COVID, that the have-nots are not being vaccinated in the same proportion. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying, I need a place where I'm not up on my home in Mexico City. I don't want to move forever into New York City, but I need a safe haven just in case. And so they're no longer or 2-bedroom, they're buying 3 and 4 bedrooms because they're turning around and saying, I might need my mother-in-law to come along. I might need the kids to come along. I might need the nanny to come along. And so we are now seeing that more and more. Another, isn't it amazing? You only asked me one question and I'm rattling on, but
you're giving, and I think for our listeners, something for everybody to hone in on is, and this is what we talked about before we recorded, is in being a real estate agent, well, there's a question I have about this, but number one, watching how you look at your market, you're always looking at your market on the ground in New York and completely relevant, as you know exactly the inventory, you're knowing exactly what's going on. And then you go, okay, so this is my world, but don't pretend the rest of the world doesn't have an impact on that, especially in New York City. And how is the rest of how are we impacting the world, and how is the world impacting us, and positioning and understanding so that you're of service and you're winning business. Like you're going from you're going from $80 million deals to still doing more volume at only $1 to $4 million deals the next year. But what were you going to say? And I want to know how you did that. But yeah.
Yeah, but that's exactly that. Saying that, how, a favorite word now is pivot. How are we going to pivot? But what are you pivoting from? Ask yourself in your own markets, what are the trigger points that are going to affect your market? It doesn't mean that they've affected them already. So, for instance, in New York City, they keep bringing up this pied-à-terre tax, that we're going to tax the wealthy every year because they're not using their apartments enough, up to 4%. So if you're selling a $25 million apartment, in addition to paying all the taxes and all the other carrying charges and everything else, Now they're going to tax you another $1 million a year.
Your friends in Mexico may not be coming, Kevin. Anyway, finish. Sorry.
I know, that's, that keeps me up at night, that thought. One story about, which I love, I was just down in Mexico because I travel a lot. I get off of my little chair, my little desk, and I'm not shy about getting onto an airplane and flying down. So I was just down in Mexico last week. We had sold an apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment, he's the top lawyer in all of Mexico. He's never lost a case. Everybody, he's famous for it. He told me, interestingly enough, because everybody always thinks that, you have bodyguards because of drugs or something. Nothing to do with the cartels or anything else. He now has, before COVID, 0, all those years, no bodyguards. Now he has 6. Around his house, he has these people in full armor with machine guns. It's the haves and the have-nots.
Wow. And that's what's driving him to New York City.
Bought an apartment here just in case, that he can close up his house and he can come to New York City and stay here for a year. And remember, I know that different parts of the country have handled COVID differently.
Very differently.
But remember, New York City, we have more hospital beds here than anywhere in the world. There's not even a close second to the number. When I 1,000 years ago, in healthcare finance, and I remember at that time that they said that the average hospital in the United States was only, I'm going to make this up, 180 rooms. Well, we have, it's called Bedpan Alley on First Avenue. You have like New York Hospital is 3,000 beds, Bellevue's 3,000, Cornell's.
So if you're planning on getting sick, go to New York. No, I'm kidding. Okay,
right. But that's the safe haven. The safe haven. So, you have the wealthy that are here that are protected. You don't have to have a bodyguard. You have the hospitals that are here. You still have the education, all the schools that are here. So that's pretty remarkable. And even, and I'm sorry, I'm digressing a second, but
because you're not. I'm going to bring it back home, but keep going.
Okay, I love it when you bring me back home. Is that they did everybody. If you ask people or brokers saying why were the mainland Chinese coming here, or why are the Indians coming here, they immediately say schools. Oddly, that's not the view. They did a survey of top business people, and they said, what is the top 3 reasons why you're coming to New York, especially, but into the United States? Number 1 reason was our transparency. If living in New Delhi or living in Mexico City or any place else around the world, it's like, have you ever been on an airplane and then you sit there and you're sitting in your comfortable seat, and then you ask the person next to you, saying, how much do you pay for your ticket? And it's completely different than what you paid for your ticket. And when did you
I've never done that.
And everybody. And that's what the tax system is in the rest of the world. So, it's I think it's something like 3% of Indians pay taxes. If you're in India and you're sitting there going, well, why should I pay if my neighbor's not paying? So business people love that about America. There's a transparency. The second reason was actually for health. And the reason is that if you're all of a sudden in Beijing or New Delhi and you go out for 9 months a year and you see things floating in the air,
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
They're going, by the time I get to be 40, I'm going to have such asthma and my children are going to.
Right, because you're breathing that in. Yeah.
And the third reason was for education, But again, how every culture has a different definition of a term. And, we talked about that.
Before you go there, I'm going to recap. But do
Okay.
give us, so this is important in understanding how other markets affect your market. I want to ask you 2 questions, and then I want to go into exactly what you said, everybody. We're going to get back to people's interpretations because we're talking about different markets in your market. But you said 2 things. The first one is transparency, health, and education. So different cultures' education is important for different reasons. I want to back up that. Or do you want to add to that? But because I want to get this in so they understand the point of this information for business. Say that again, Kevin. Wait, say that again. Go ahead.
Yeah, regarding education, again, why somebody in mainland China wants their child to go to Harvard is different than I wish my children could have gotten into Harvard. Because I'm socially insecure. I'm wearing an Hermes tie because I'm socially insecure. Somebody from mainland China is doing it for a completely different reason. And they're doing it to make a statement. A woman in China, mainland China, is carrying her Hermes, bag. She's making a statement of credibility, and there's other reasons, ripple effects on that. It's not because they're socially insecure. And so, you have to understand what luxury means to different people in different cultures. We think of it only from our limited perspective.
So repeating something, because next question on limited perspective, you said 3 things because a lot of this is understanding your market, how other markets affect your market, and then knowing how to shift, knowing to shift, when to shift, and how to shift. The 3 things you said are 3 important words. Number 1, understand how to pivot. Number 2, understand what you're pivoting from. And I would add to that, and do you know what you're pivoting to? But number 3, trigger points. There are and I think that answers my question. So you're pivoting. Focus on, you're always pivoting. That's why the field team has been so successful. You guys have pivoted many times to stay out of the market. Know what you're pivoting from, know what's going on in your market, and know your trigger points and what you're going to. Was that kind of sum that up?
Yeah, and the trigger points don't necessarily have to be negative things. So for instance, if I were in Seattle, with all the beautiful air and the beautiful skies and everything else, I would only have one tagline: live longer. You can't say that in New York City. Nobody is coming to New York City to live longer. You're coming here to make money. You're coming here for the energy. You're coming for but if I was in Seattle, so the trigger point, is saying that if I was up in Seattle, I'd be playing up to saying we are a healthy environment.
Yeah.
And the trigger point was because of everything that's happened with COVID. That world, we're going to continue into the COVID world. That is our new reality, and we're going to, again, we're learning by leaps and bounds on how to pivot society. But in everybody's individual market down in Florida, how are they going to all of a sudden, with climate change, pivot, with that, it's and how are you going to then market correctly so that it resonates to the listener?
Buy a house that's going to be the ocean in 100 years. So should that be our tagline in Florida?
Exactly.
Actually, buy a house. If you're if you've got a listing to Mile End, don't worry. In 100 years, this will be oceanfront. Your kids will have an oceanfront view. Leave a legacy.
I know. Please, come visit us in August. See how much you like Florida.
Buy a rental house. Everybody rents in August, and you want to be here when nobody's here in November. That's why I originally bought here. So hey, whatever way they're going, figure out the other way to go that's better.
It's a win-win.
Talk about it. Pivot, know where you're coming from, know your trigger points, and look for trigger points.
but I would sit there and going, that whole issue about being a safe haven. America is becoming more and more, we're back to a stable environment, if you will, and play that up with foreigners. It's not going to, that wouldn't work for a local person. They're
well, but here's, and we're going to go to the word trust, but not yet. We're going to talk about safe haven. Think about that. So safe haven. So we were having a conversation, everybody, before we recorded about, I'm in the panhandle of Florida. It used to be known as Redneck Riviera, but now when you come down here, it's quite different. It's where all the Southern billionaires go, and me. I'm not one of those. But it's also a very different environment in politically, culturally, everything from Manhattan. And so, but we were talking about how whatever your world is, don't kid yourself. This is quoting Kevin Brown himself, who is on the show. Don't kid yourself that you're not affected by one another and by the rest of the world. You're not in a bubble. You can be mentally in your bubble, but you're still affected by things all around you. So safe haven, this is a safe haven. To some people, the panhandle is not a safe haven. And to some people, New York, Manhattan is not, and vice versa.
Exactly. And, people are moving from Florida and they're going to Idaho or some other place,
And you're in your safe haven, Kevin, and I'm in mine. So, right?
Right. But that's another thing that kind of ticks me off about our, that we claim that we're like a service industry, and you sit there and going, but we forget, what do those words mean? And we're really in a service industry. Again, I'd given a talk a few years ago, so I apologize for your listeners who've heard this, but I'm with 800 agents from one Sotheby's down in Miami. And it all had to do with, like passion and, what drives me as an individual, but also as a broker and so forth. And I paused to and remember, the half of, Miami, it seems, are, Jewish, and the other half are quasi-Christian. And so there's that overlay, in the audience. And so I said, to the audience, saying, 98% of what we do, and this is what makes this a service industry, we don't get paid for. We open and close doors. We're showing people things. 98% of what we do, we don't convert. It doesn't mean anything. And then I paused when I'm giving this talk, and I said, but that strikes me that 2%, our conversion rate, that was probably the same conversion rate that Jesus Christ had. There was, all the air got sucked out of the room at that moment. Everybody just said, did he just compare himself to Jesus Christ? And all the Jews got nervous, all the Christians got nervous.
All the quasi-Christians, right.
And then the laughter started, and the rolling laughter, and the moderator said, I think we should end on that note. But that's what, like being in the service industry, it's at 2%. That's it.
2% is a lot. And actually, and everybody, side note, do listen to your first interview with us, episode 161, How to Find and Stay on Your Journey for Success. You'll learn about Kevin a little more there. You were a priest first.
I was studying for.
Definitely. So yeah. He really had 12. Like I always say, you've got to have your 12. Like he had 12. His 12 disciples. And one of those went sideways on him. But, anyway.
Exactly. But, where should I succeed, or how can I succeed where Jesus failed? One of them went off.
I don't know about that, right? But but like success is about, when agents come to me and talk about a failure, I think, right, and you're going to have so many of those.
Yes.
From every one of those, the more, if you have one and you've got to talk about it, you're not having enough.
And and the whole issue with marketing, for instance, if you're doing a mailing, mass mailing, the most you're going to get out of that is a 3% return or
and that's just
conversion.
a call back, not even necessarily a deal.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so but the point is, concentrate on the 3%, concentrate on the 2%.
Oh, exactly.
Not the 8%, and listen to brokers all the time. We call everybody brokers here, but listen to listen to the reasons why they can't do. Fill in the blank. It's a long list of, oh no, I can't do, mailings don't work, postcards don't work, open houses don't work, guys, concentrate on the, if you go into a dark room, there was a religious group called Christophers in the Catholic tradition, and part of their thing, slogans were, if you go into a dark room, it only takes one candle to light up the room. Look at the light. Look at that. Well, the same way in sales. Look at your percent. Don't concentrate on the 98%. The 98% got you the 2%.
Exactly. And you can only see so much. And what you focus on determines what you see, determines what happens.
Yes. You become what you think, you become what you pray, you become what you eat.
Was it Gandhi who said, watch what your thoughts become your actions, become your habits, become your values, become your destiny.
Yeah, when Craig and I were raised, we have 2 boys that are now 24 and 25, and the younger one in real estate doing very well. Thank you, God.
I just met him. Yes.
But we would tell them, saying we are creatures of habit, and ask each one of us needs to constantly ask ourselves, what habits have we formed? What habits are we trying to form right now? Negative habits included. Saying we are, and saying, pick your habits. You want to walk around with a clenched fist in terms of and hold that fist for 5 seconds and feel the anger inside you automatically happen.
Back to, and that goes to what you're talking about. So we just said, I just was doing this quote for one of our, by the way, we're not announcing it on the show yet, but we are officially have another company that is officially a coaching company, Breakthrough Luxury. I'll put in a little plug right now. This is our break for commercial. I'm kidding. I'm kind of kidding. But in that, to what you're talking about, is so important. Your thoughts become your actions, become your habits, become your values. We're going to come back to values in a second. Become your destiny. So 2 things. Keep in mind, you don't even know what your own habits are. That's how they became habits. So pause and take a look. And that became your value. And I'm going to touch on value. You talked about
maybe your listeners, write them down. This would be kind of an interesting exercise. Write down what you habits are. Because I bet the average person was sitting, I don't know if I have any habits. Ask your spouse.
You do that. You are habits.
Ask your spouse what your habits are.
We live by habits because that's just how we're wired. Okay. Yeah. Values. Let's talk about values, because this is an interesting thing that's going back to pivoting. It's going back to what you're pivoting from, and trigger points inside of yourself and of other people, and how vastly different we all are. We talked about the word trust, and you have had a lot of local experience and international experience excessively. Like, your understanding, you've even shared with me subtle cultural differences, but you talked about the word trust and how we think of that word in someone who's Chinese or someone who's from India or obviously China, but give us a little, because that was really introspective.
It's whenever in 2019 and before that, 64% of my business came from mainland China. I always would say Asia, but it was mainland China. And so I was well versed in the culture at that time. In 2020, because of the political situations in both in China and the United States, it didn't just go down, it went to zero. How could it go from 64 zero overnight? But it did. But while in 2019, and whenever I would be taking around somebody from mainland China, I'd always tell the other agent, please do not start crying. Please do not say you gave me, I gave you, my trust and I trusted you and you're going to start crying. And they go, Kevin, I'm not going to start crying. I'm tough as nails. They're going to start crying. I guarantee it. And then what would happen is that, the mainland Chinese buyer would, and I'd always try and prepare people ahead of time saying, when you have an accepted offer, it's the beginning of negotiating.
Now you're saying when you're talking to agents and you have a Chinese buyer, is that what you're saying? Okay.
That's what I'm saying. And so then I'm going to get back to your trust.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
And and then I would say, and once you have a signed contract, they're negotiating. And once it closes, they're negotiating. When I would give talks, in mainland China, I would say to the Chinese brokers and all, saying, this is one of your biggest issues. You don't know when to quit negotiating. They took it as a great compliment. They laughed.
Exactly.
They thought, great. So back to the word trust. So I would say to the broker about saying, you're going to start crying. Trust for us is a one-dimensional emotion. It's, I trusted somebody, I gave them my trust. For mainland Chinese, whether it's in Cantonese or in traditional writing, because there are two different writings, is made up of two characters. One is to know and one is to believe. So think of it as your brain and your heart. Well, knowing that, I'm never going to get into somebody from mainland China into their heart. I can, though, get into their brain. So I'm only going to get halfway there. I have to manage my own expectations. So therefore, I learned a long time ago with anyone from mainland China, which are different than Taiwanese, different than Hong Kongese, is that every single question that they ask me, I have to believe in my heart. They already know the answer. They're looking to build trust, in their own head, in their mind with me. So every single question, if you don't know the answer, don't try and BS them. Don't try and wing it. And so therefore, I'm more than happy to say to them, oh, let me get back to you with that answer. But they know, and I learned this in many ways because the private bankers in mainland China, that they would always say, this very, very loyal, and private bankers are part of a family. They go back generations with any,
Wow.
and they turned around and they said, but Kevin, they have 4 different banks. They play one against the other all the time. They're after information. The mainland Chinese, you can't give them enough information. They're just remarkable about that. But you have to know about this whole issue with trust, because if you go in there and saying, oh, I've spent a month with them, I've enjoyed them, and you're gonna get hurt.
Well, and I think what's interesting is but to your point is that raises self-awareness about when I'm working with someone, what is my perspective? What is my expectation culturally and the values I hold? And when someone isn't aligning with that, it's not even, to them, you may feel disrespected, but it's who disrespected. You're the person who's serving them. They're
Right.
the person they're the people spending the money. They're the client. And shift it to wait. What is their perspective? What is trust for them? What is valuable for them? How does it serve them? And back to what you said, they're not going to give it to me because of a heart thing. They're going to give it to me because of an I earned it thing.
Yes.
And because, not even that, like even what I just said could be misinterpreted from both cultures. Like, what does that mean to the point? But you just said something. And
but even, because you're a mom, our kids when they were younger, like when they go into their teenage years, every teenage child always says, "You don't trust me." And my answer was, "No, I don't. Trust is earned."
Right. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Nope. And not for a second.
And back to that Chinese, is there is I trust in my heart and I trust in my mind, and that I'm going to take it to another level. We always talk about Chris Voss on this show, Never Split the Difference, and he talks about the different types. You've got analyticals, you've got accommodators, which is more of the American, and you've got assertives, which is a little American. But the Chinese in general are the analyticals, because the analyticals aren't. If you do something nice for an analytical, that was nice, thank you, but what do you want? And that's a little bit more, because people who want information, they're tapping into that part of making a decision, and almost culturally, that's where their values and how they process and
exactly, and that's how they're going to be making the decision, and they're going to be negotiating a certain way that might be foreign to you. So you, as a successful agent, you need to prepare all parties what to expect. In like when I'm showing 75% of our market co-ops, the rest are 25% is real property, which are condominiums and townhouses, and so
define co-ops, but that's where define that. Most of our listeners know, but just to be sure they understand, because that is a definite, that's a big thing in New York.
It's unique in New York, Manhattan especially, but unique in New York. Washington D.C. has a few co-ops, but for you're buying shares in a corporation that gives you a proprietary lease to have the apartment.
And the building you're living in is that corporation that you can basically get voted in or out of being able to buy there. Okay, so let's go on. Yeah, I just want everybody on board with that. So talking about that.
And they determine whether you can rent. They determined there's a whole board process. There's a board interview. I haven't done in years, but in the early years, literally they would ask to see the pet, and some brokers would drug their pets so that the pet would pulling eyes. It wasn't me.
Pet? What pet? I don't have a pet. What are you talking about, pet?
For instance, if I'm taking somebody out with a co-op, I will, as I'm getting out of the Uber or car, then I immediately say, the interview's starting now. And they say, no, I haven't even seen the apartment. I said, the doorman speaks, the person in the elevator speaks, and, kind of zip it, because that's what a co-op is going to turn you down. I tell people in co-ops all the time saying, if you have teenage kids, get them off all internet for the next 2 years. No social media. Why? Because all you need to do is have your 16-year-old son with a bunch of his friends holding up a bunch of beer.
Wow.
And then
can we use that metaphor? What a great metaphor. When you're buying a co-op in New York, it is the same thing as being a real estate agent for a career.
Yeah. Okay.
Think about that. Everybody you meet's interviewing you all the time.
All the time. And that's what a co-op, a condominium will be different. A condominium real property.
Okay. Exactly. So here's where we're going to go. We're going to start closing out, but here we're going to close out on your point.
Right,
I know, because we can talk for days. We already talked for days. Will be another.
We haven't talked about passion. What drives the person?
We're gonna talk about two things. We will talk about passion. We still have our final three. We need to be off in 20 minutes, which means 30 for us, which might
be 45.
So here's we can, because I have another interview. right after you. But here's where we're going. Number one today has really been honing in on being aware of yourself, your market, and how to pivot and the effect other markets have on you. So in all of that, you are a person, this is going to ask the question. I was going to make it broad, but now I'm making it specific. You're someone who went from doing like there goes the redneck Riviera in me, but doing $80 million in 2019 to 2020, or was it 2020, 80 million, 2021, everything's between 1 and 4, and you still did more. It was 19 to 20.
Yeah, 19,
how did you do?
2020, but that's neither.
So 2019, 80 million deal, $80 million deals. 2020, $1 to $4 million deals. That means you had, and still doing more volume. That means you had to do a hell of a pivot. So bring it home for us on pivot, trigger points, and knowing where you're coming from and going to. What was the key in that specific experience to nail that and succeed at that?
You're very good at what you do. That was very good.
That wasn't the question, but thank you.
And because I didn't know, like exactly how I was doing it, and I remember the manager of our office called up and said, will you like speak at one of these office meetings, and which I've never been to, but I said sure, and I said, oh, do you want me to talk about Asia or Mexico or something? She said, no, I want you did more sales side deals than anybody else in the firm. I'm sorry, the buy side, buy side. And I said, really? And so then I asked Craig, my husband partner. I said, how did I do it? Could you explain? And he said, Kevin, you've been on the internet, on social media. You're now spending, and I'm not doing Facebook, posting stupid pictures of dogs and cats. It's very pinpointed, marketing. And he said, you're on it all the time now. So for instance, before in 2019, and I should know these numbers, but I bet no more than 25% of my business came through referrals. And fast forward 2 years today, it's at least 85% to 90% what I'm doing. Referrals. And it's just not within Sotheby's, it's throughout all the other companies. A small company in your neck of the woods, who else are they going to refer to? They have the confidence because of Sotheby's that they're going to be paid. They have the confidence. It's me that deal's going to happen. I'm not going to let something fall by the wayside. I look at my referral network very, very carefully and with great love and affection. And so it all had to do with that type of reaching out. So for instance, every single time I'm getting the Mansion Global or anything else, I go through it, and anytime that there is a nice property and they have an email address, I immediately write to the broker and just saying, great listing, you must be very proud. They're so happy to hear that.
Awesome.
That somebody's taken the 5 seconds to do it. I have to plead with all of your listeners, guys, if you're going to do an ad, put down an email address. Even Sotheby's does not often put down email addresses. So you have to have them sign into something, put down all sorts of confidential information to get in touch.
And the connections never made.
Right.
Yeah.
And say, put down
go through that. Make it easy.
Yeah, you got to make it as easy as possible for people, and do it consistently. That's something that like a number of coaches are constantly hitting their listeners on top of the head with, saying, be consistent. Whatever you're doing, be consistent.
Okay, so we're going to repeat that for everybody. We're talking about how you pivot, where you pivot from and to, and trigger points. And how did you maintain your level of success? And the answer in short is, number one, you've got to stay relevant now. You've got to be in the present in what you do every day. You've got to notice how you know your market, where you are and abroad. Number two is you've got to reach out and connect. You've got to build a network, and it's very simple. None of this, it sounds like a magic trick. It's not. It's your habits, which we talked about, and your values, so that when you do it, you execute on it in a way that pays it forward and builds a career. You make yourself approachable and you make it easy. And that's it.
And here's another, since, your listeners are mostly brokers, that what's the first thing that a broker,
so what's your question? No, you're back. So what were you going to say? What is a broker?
The, very first thing that a broker does when they sell a property, they put that buyer or the seller, but the buyer on their mailing list, and they start sending them their newsletters. Isn't that great? I just bought a house and now you're undermining, I should have waited another month, or I paid too much, or, saying, don't send them anything to do with real estate. It's the last thing in the world they want to see. It would be like, you're getting married and now you're sending the person all sorts of the spouses that they could have married. What that dopey.
So have some empathy and act on it, right?
Oh no. And so what I do, and people can do other things, is what do people like about New York City? We have so many activities. So I do a calendar of charitable and unique events that are happening in New York City. And any of your listeners who want to receive it, I'm more than happy to send it. I send out 50,000 of those. That's my mailing list every single month. I touch 50,000 people every single month. And now Washington, D.C. is doing it, and Seattle's doing it, and Beverly Hills. And so we're all interrelated. And so maybe, whatever I'm advertising, I only talk maybe one sentence about real estate. It's always the same thing, is saying it's wonderful, it's wonderful. But in your own market, another thing that somebody could do in the various markets, there's a woman, it's called the Olshan Report. The Olshan Report, she comes out every...
Olshan Report.
Olshan. She comes out every Monday. We read it religiously because she only highlights the top 2 sales that in the luxury market, and that are the pending sales. And then she just tracks saying, over $4 million is our luxury market, saying this is how many pending sales there were. Not closed sales. Closed sales in New York City might take 3 to 5 months to get recorded.
Yeah, closed sales is so last year. It's just got to be pendings.
Yeah. So pending sales. Now all of a sudden, Donna Olshan is a firm that maybe has 1.5 people. She's quoted every single week in the New York Times and the Real Deal and Global.
Okay.
And it's a thing to do. Another thing.
Go, and then and then I got to get these final 3 in here. But go, please.
They started doing. I call it eye candy, and I just do the top 3 sales. Now this is real estate related, but it's real estate porn. That's all it is. It's 3.
Right.
I didn't do the sales, but the picture of it and a little and I click through and saying courtesy of Doug Sullivan or Sotheby's and just the top 3. I do that one.
Okay. I'm summing you up and then I'm asking you the last 3. So here's what sums it up. In pivoting to your market and being a successful agent, you're a successful agent in your market and you're yet a global agent. And the way you've done that is you connect, and everything you do, you go big and small. So when it comes to the market, you know the market globally, you understand dynamics globally, and you understand them on the ground where you are now. When it comes to people, you've got an email list of 50,000 people, but you also connect one-on-one with people consistently. Consistency is the key, and constantly. And in that formula, what's the big picture? What's the little picture? for Kevin Brown and who he serves, and that carries the momentum for big success in every way.
And with a conversion rate of 2%.
You say that, but
I'm happy. I'm
but
thrilled.
I would argue that your conversion rate depends on what you consider a touch. It might be on 100%.
True. You're such a flirt.
I'm not even flirting. I'm just saying. I can't, like, right?
No, I mean, but you're right. I'm saying because one thing that I'll do a plug for Sotheby's is that like we are really not interested in selling one property. We're interested in the relationships. Every single person I meet knows 200 people. That's who I am.
And the experience, because Kevin, being your friend is an experience.
I don't know
like talking to you is so much fun.
Yeah, I don't know one person right now, a friend that's looking to buy or sell, but they all know 200 people, so they all work for me.
And they can't resist you. So exactly. There you go.
I know because you bring out the best in people. That's why you're such a great coach. You bring. You listen to the people, and which we had talked about, saying God gave us one mouth and two ears for a reason. You listen very carefully, and you take notes, and so that's your secret sauce.
Thank you.
Sauce.
I'm not even paying them, everybody. Well, thank you. Okay, final 3 questions, and we have 10 minutes, so let's see if we can do this. Question number 1 is, in your success, what has been your most powerful resource or tool?
Knowing myself, knowing my strengths and my weaknesses, knowing my likes and my dislikes is just as valuable. Saying I know myself. I'll digress for a second. Whenever I'm on the panel, and there's always like one gal from Asia and one guy from Beverly Hills or something, and they're always talking about saying, "Oh, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and and I do this, and then they turn to me and they say, "What time do you get up, Kevin?" I'm not a big morning person.
Not 5 a.m.
No, I'm not saying. I got up twice in my life that early, and I regretted both of them. And
so you decided not to do it again.
I guess Craig, my partner, says that I pack it in the 5 hours that I'm working. But and I make a huge amount.
There's something to be said for that, because sometimes less is more. You can only be productive for so long. But next question.
Okay.
Book. Is there a book, or I'm just going to say book. What book do we just have to read?
I'm embarrassed to say that, when I had my own company, I would encourage is Barnes and Noble still around, or any bookstore still around?
So. Yeah.
But I would encourage them to go into the real estate section of whatever store, and don't buy the book, God forbid. Just look at the title.
You're welcome, Barnes and Noble. Whatever we can do to keep you in business.
No, but just read the titles of the chapters. It's like a love letter, or any letter that you receive. The first sentence and the last sentence are the most important. In between are just.
Is that your way of saying I don't read books?
I read. I'm a reader of everything real estate, but no, I'm sorry. I'm trying. I should have like a book that I throw out. I did read the ninja thing, but anyway, we won't go there.
What about, what you said the last time? I think it was you. I've gotten this once or twice out of 200. I think we're at about 260. The Bible.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm every day I read the Bible. And
there's one you read. Yeah.
But the Bible is, when I was a missionary, a padrecito down in Guatemala, at one point, I know I'm digressing, but at one point, Indian, we're way up in the mountains, and there's all these people who are like learning how to be a good Catholic, and one Indian stood up and said like, "Oh, Padrecito, like look at the Old Testament, it's that thick, and the New Testament's only that thick. How come?" And I was about to like pontificate about all sorts of things about history and da. Another Indian immediately stood up and they said, because we're still living the New Testament. I was blown away. I sat there and I thought, this uneducated Indian put me in my place. Spiritually, I was and I thought, I'm going to repeat that story 1,000 times in my lifetime. What a remarkable insight.
And back to words and values and what they mean, uneducated, perhaps not.
Yeah, because but you sit there and going, so yes, I do. I do have certain when I do wake up schedule, and so I carve out the time for my spiritual self, and I look for that. One article that I just read, they talked about successful brokers. They're ones who make sure that they carve out time, even for wasted time. You need time to waste. And
you need time to waste. But it's your spirit. Start with what's important first. Every day you start with what fills your spirit, it's like a meditation. It's get fresh.
Yeah, because what is at the core of who you are, because it's, people will just give BS, answers to this question, saying, why do you want to be a real estate, agent? They'll go, oh, because it gives me freedom. And go, oh,
that's the worst joke ever, right?
I don't have a gun, but I really do want to shoot them and shoot myself afterwards, or shoot myself first. And then
don't do that. Jesus wouldn't approve. No, I'm kidding, but that's an inside joke. But whatever for us.
But the point is that is saying that no, ask yourself, saying you say I like the freedom it gives me. Okay, why is that important? Constantly ask yourself why. Why is that important? Why is that important? And then you'll get to the point where you say, hey, I'm getting to the core of who I am as a human being. Once you get to that core, and hopefully it is still an ongoing process.
Don't lose that thought. Once you get to the core.
Once you're at that core, you can make $1 zillion, because I cannot tell you on the, I don't know how many deals, 8 deals that I'm under contract right now. What the commission is, that's not what motivates me. What motivates me is the intimacy that I have the opportunity to share. That's what gets me up late in the morning every morning.
Not at 5 a.m. And that also, that's what drives you. That's where your passion is, and knowing who you are. Because the first thing, the first and last question, we've gone full circle, is knowing yourself. Yeah. Knowing yourself and nurturing that.
And hopefully that it's an ongoing process. It's not like, I'm a work in progress,
Aren't we all?
But recognize and embrace that. And, but sit there and going, okay, these are the things that I really like doing. Anything you don't like doing, if you don't like licking stamps, then hire somebody to lick the stamps.
Or get one of those things that
but you can, make good use of not just your time. Nikki, at one point, we were on a panel, and I was complimenting her, saying, because she's great at time management. And she said, Kevin, but you're great at effort management. I do not do anything effort. If somebody else wants to run with it, and I'm good, let them run with it. I have no ego in it whatsoever. I'm not like out to win that race.